here's what we're going to talk about. Basically, this is the nuts and bolts of how to build a really good workflow, how those dates and how those statuses really impact a cascading effect of commercial lines. We're going to talk about manual renewals, which the HawkSoft folks out there will recognize this as synchronous versus asynchronous downloads. Policy rewrites, because unfortunately we all have to do that. Workflows, and I'm going to throw in a couple things of my own flavor. Now, I'll just go ahead and say this now for the entire group. If any of you had a question at any time, I can be long in the tooth at times. So raise your hand, talk, we'll stop. The purpose of this is for me to help impart some of what I've learned onto you guys. I don't have all the answers, but hopefully I have some of them, so you guys can go back and maybe make your process and database a little better than how we started. So here's me, and this is Ryan Reese. I'm sure Ryan is here online. I don't know if you can hear me, Ryan, but if you can, please say hello. I've had the pleasure of working with Ryan before. I am a third generation at my family's insurance agency. I actually started out life in mechanical and industrial engineering, and like everybody else in the insurance business, I didn't wake up saying one day, man, I'm going to go be an insurance guy. But I've been helping my dad build life policy since I was 2 years old, and I decided that I wanted to do something with my life that I felt like was more impactful. I used to be a quality engineer at a crankshaft facility, and I sold oil and gas valves. The people that I sold stuff to, I didn't really see the benefit to. The first month in insurance, I had a client who's been with us for 30 years, house burned completely down, and watching them go through that claims process and watching the policy my dad write perform really sold me on the noble purpose of it. So that's a little bit about me. So what I've done is I've taken, fat fingers. I've taken the knowledge and the experience as a process engineer and applied that to insurance with trying to keep it is not dry. So this isn't an engineering conversation, by the way. There will be no math tests. Calculators are welcome. There's not an exit quiz. So we have a saying in the engineering world. I just took enough. Come on in, guys. Go ahead. We'll put a pause. You're just fine. Come on in. Come on in. The programmers will tell you this, engineers will tell you this, but garbage in equals garbage out. Sounds kind of intuitive, right? But what you put into your database every day and how you manage your commercial clients and your commercial lines is exactly what you're going to get out of your database. So if your producers, your CSRs, account managers, your CFO, if your staff is putting in rock solid data the same way every time, then at the end of the year, the end of the month, and the end of the quarter, when you go into agency intelligence, which we'll get to in a little bit, you will have a very robust and accurate pulse on exactly what your business is doing. Garbage in equals, who said that first? You get a hat. Right here? All right. I'm a big fan of swag. You guys can blaze it over. Hope that fits. So that's a little bit about me. Six Sigma is just a method of statistical process control, and ISO is not the insurance ISO. That is the International Standards Organization. I used to be an internal auditor for the processes and certifications that we did. So this is where I'm from. This is why you should care. Hopefully this is enough to at least earn 45 minutes of your attention. So here's the basics. When you're going to use HawkSoft and you want to optimize it for your commercial clients and you really want to put together that CL flow, statuses. Oops, laser button. Statuses are huge because your status is exactly what's going on with that client at any given time. You'll probably look at your CMS right now, and I want all of you to picture one of your commercial clients. Everyone's got a favorite, right? Like children, we all have our favorite. So anybody picture your favorite client right now, right? They're probably on renewal or active. They could be on renewal pending. They could be cancel, non-renew. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Just a show of hands, just to pause for a second. How many in here are agency owners? Wow, okay. How many here are chief revenue officers or sales managers? All right, that's me. Hi, guys. How many of you guys are here service managers, chief operating officers? Okay. Yeah, if you're the agency owner, you just keep your hand up, guys. I mean, we got to do it all. Anybody a CSR or agent or an account manager? Okay. Everybody that raised your hand, you're going to have a different paradigm here. So if I spent 6 months as a CSR. I run a book of business and the CRO. So hopefully I can appeal to your perspective here. But whatever your role is in the agency, the best thing to do is to leverage HawkSoft's features. As you saw this morning, there's a ton of really, really cool features to use and how to customize them. Client tags I've fallen in love with. I really have. I preach it to my agency, and we use the client tags very frequently. The other thing I want to talk about here, and this is not a HawkSoft thing at all. This is an engineering principle, and this is the ISO background. So what ISO says is if you have a process, write it down. If your written process does not reflect what you're actually doing, then you have no idea what you're doing. So if you have a rewrite procedure And at Gem Young, we used to call them work instructions because that's what the manufacturing world calls them. We're not manufacturers. I would advise something a little less, on the nose. We call them procedures, workflows. So every process you have, you want to have a written workflow. The reason for this is not just an exercise in futility and typing, but when you scale your business, when you hire a new account manager, when you hire a new agent, you want to be able to hand them an entire jump drive, or, in a perfect world, you send them a link to a SharePoint file with all of your workflows on them and say, okay, in your first 90 days, you're going to master all of these, and if you get stuck, there's your workflows. Audit them, date them. That's a big deal. Now, this is a theme of this week, but automate, and when you're done, do a little more automation. If you guys have ever, show of hands, who has gotten a DoorDash order during the pandemic? Postmates, Grubhub. Isn't it awesome? Man, I've abused that. Taco Bell has taken way too much of my money this year. But it's going to show you that people in this world really want readily accessible whatever, whether it's a ride home, whether it's a burrito, whether it's an ID card, whether it's a certificate. If we can get this out of the paper world and into a more automated and repeatable process, that's the way to go. And again, I'm going to beat this part to death. Customize HawkSoft. The way I use it might not be the way I use it. Ryan was supposed to be here, and I know he's online. So I don't know if you can hear me, Ryan. Is he online? Not you, Ryan Reese. Okay, I'll do this part. So how many of you have gotten HawkSoft in the last 12 months? Okay. How many have had HawkSoft for more than 3 years? How many of us are lifers? All right, I think we've had it long before I even started working for my dad. These haven't really changed. These have always been in HawkSoft. As you saw this morning in the DOS and the Windows version, these are all there. I really want to spend time and cover the nuances of this because understanding, you guys can come on in, it's okay. Got plenty of room for everybody. What these mean and understanding exactly why they are the way they are will help you not only make them accurate, but to customize your system to use them the best way possible. So the inception date, right? You write a new policy. We're going to have a little example here. It's going to be called Daprile Enterprises. Started the company this morning. It's a startup. It's going to be great. The inception date of the policy is the original effective date. So if you met with me and I am 11/1 effective date, you start making money on the inception date. That should never change. So no matter how long this client is with your company, or however long that policy is enforced, that inception date is the inception date. We use that for tracking commission. So the inception date doesn't have to match sold date, by the way, and we'll get to that. So on a brand new policy, on a brand new client, inception date and effective date are equal. So in this example, all of you just onboarded Daprile Enterprises, and it's an 11/1 effective date for the commercial package, commercial auto, everything. So you'll have 11/1 here and 11/1 here. We'll show you on agency intelligence here in a second what this means. Effective date is a dynamic date. What does a dynamic date mean? Does anybody know what I mean by that? Exactly. When does that change? Every renewal. When does inception date change? Perfect. Yep, you guys are following me. This is awesome. So the expiration date and effective date are both dynamic dates. These are going to impact sales and retention, and they're going to impact agency intelligence. Because what you'll see if you're a CSR, COO, we're going to go back there for a second, is your effective date and expiration date are going to be how we use sales and retention to track your commercial renewals 30, 60, 90, and 120 days out. Inception date is how the sales managers are going to see when we made money, and sold date is going to figure out when the deal was closed. So it is, what's today? October 18th? So you guys all sold a policy on October 18th. It's fantastic. So we're going to go to that here for a second. The dates are going to be different, but bear with me. So I'm going to go back here. For those of you, this is everybody can see all this, right? Okay. So if you look at this, this is the I'll show you guys how to use this feature. This is a really cool feature. Go Browns. Oh, come on. Come on. There we go. So as you can see, in this particular case, first of all, any How I Met Your Mother fans out there? Anybody remember the Lorenzo von Matterhorn? That was my college nickname. So in this case, the effective date of this policy was 9/27. The initial status date of this was 9/27, but I put the inception date in wrong because I did this very late at night. And I did that kind of on purpose, kind of not. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to change this for you guys. So does everybody know how to change these if you have administrative rights? Okay. So if you want to come in here and you go to Change Client Policy, And let's say we did have that boo-boo. So the inception date of this policy should really be the 27th. Yes, I want to change it. The sold date of this policy, well, we're going to change it again. So the sold date of this policy would be here. This is a very likely scenario in commercial lines. Very rarely do you guys sell something the day it's effective. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Here's why this is important. If that inception date is after the effective date, it's going to throw off your agency intelligence reporting. And this is something as a CRO, as an agency owner, as anybody that's in charge, you want to be able to audit this process. So if you're seeing new policies, and everybody audits their process, if you're seeing these policies and you're wondering why your producers are putting these in wrong, it's a really good time to have a conversation about data entry integrity. So, example there for you. We're going to cancel that just so it's there. Any questions on what I've done? I would tell you that if that reflects the processes of your agency, as long as it's consistent across the board, I don't think there's a huge problem with it, because then you know that your sold date, I like to do it ahead of time, and here's why. If you have an AOR or if you have an X date, especially for commercial lines, so if you're a commercial lines client of mine and you renew on December 1st, right? And let's say there's a sales contest going on, or you're trying to evaluate a producer's effectiveness, and we know we're going to get that AOR, what did I say, December 1st. We've won the business. The inception date is December 1st because that's when we start making commission, effective date, expiration date. I would advise the sold date being now so that you can look at this report right here. We're going to skip a little bit of ahead, but I really want to answer this question for you. So if you go here to Reports, Agency Intelligence, which I love this, by the way. How many people are using Agency Intelligence? That's good. If you're not using it, if you take anything away from this, if you get your data right, this becomes your most powerful tool. That running the advanced reports, because everybody that raised your hands, we're not running these reports during the day. These are at Tuesday night, when the kids are in bed or whatever's going on. So anyway, to answer your question, so if you see right here where it says policies sold versus policies added. So if you want to figure out what your producers are doing, you could sort here by Agent 1 for this year. And we're a premium. We measure premium, but policy counts just fine for this discussion. So policies added versus policies sold. Policies added means these are policies where we're at or past the effective and inception date. So these are policies your agency is currently generating revenue on. Policies sold are policies that have been entered into HawkSoft. They can be policies you're making money on, but these are policies that have hit the sold date. Does that make sense to you? If it's a prospect, I like where you're at. You're getting a little ahead of me, but I like where you're at. A lot of good questions. I have a whole bag of swag for you. So prospects are in the sales and retention pipeline. So what I want to do is I want you to write that question down. Good. Definitely do it. Definitely do it. This is an extremely powerful tool. If you guys are using, please, God, don't say you're using Excel spreadsheets or even worse, a paper tablet. I used to work with a lady that used a paper tablet for all of her X dates, and my hands actually got sweaty. I'm like, why? How do you remember to call these people? Drives me nuts. But this is a really powerful tool. So what's your first name? Joe? We're going to get to that, Joe. Don't let me forget. Because I want to talk about these statuses and how that affects prospects. So policies sold, policies added, that makes sense to you. If your policy sold equals the inception date all the time, then these reports should be the exact same. That's your big difference. Good question, though. Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Are you guys hearing the microphone back there? Okay. Sorry about that. So if Joe was asking, does the sold date and the inception date have to be different? The answer is it really depends on what your agency does. So for us, we have the sold date on the day, basically the applications are signed is the best rule of thumb there. The reports differ from the fact that policies sold will pull policies that have had the sold date hit today's date. So every policy with a sold date, and the sold date is right here. So sold date is 9/29. So every policy that has a sold date on or before today will show up on the policy sold report. Any policy that has, where are we at here? Any policy that has the inception and effective date today or before will show up on policies added. The way to think about this is policies added is a report of policies you're generating commission and revenue on. Policies sold are policies that you have signed and completed apps for, but don't necessarily have to be making revenue on. The big difference here, and an example I would use, is X dating and AORs. Stupid question, but I don't want to be that guy. Everyone knows what an AOR is, right? Agent of record change. Okay, good. Does that answer your question? Okay. Do you want me to go through it a little more? Okay. Fantastic. Great questions, though, guys. Okay. So these are what these dates really mean. These dates are really, really important, and as you guys can see why, that's just one. Daprile Enterprises is one example, but the bigger and bigger of a commercial shop you become, and that was us. When I got to my agency, we were 2% commercial. Now we're 16. So we've had to really, really lean on this stuff because that's how you grow. Any other questions on the dates? This is really the meat and potatoes of it. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. That's up to you. I've seen it done a couple of different ways. We've actually created a client miscellaneous field that it says client since, and we put in their original date. You can say that when you rewrite a policy, internally, your procedure can be your sold date is always the date that you first onboarded the client. That's totally okay. I would say inception date should be the inception date of the new policy. From Jem Young's perspective, we use inception date to track commissions. So there's kind of a lot of ways to slice that one, is kind of what I've arrived to in the last couple of years. Joe's got it exactly right. Ma'am, did you hear what Joe had to say? So Joe said inception date is when you started generating commission on that policy. Sold date is when you earn that client for the very first time. So you can have a sold date that says 1/1/1991 and an inception date that says 10/1/2012. Does that make sense? Okay. Why don't we walk through an example? That might help. I'm a visual learner too. I have to. When you could tell me how to do something a million times, I'd be like, okay, yeah, no. So we're going to use this guy, right? We're going to insert a policy for this guy. So, and what's your name? Regan? How about some HawkSoft, Regan? Thanks for keeping me honest, man. Okay, so give me 1 second. Thanks, Regan. And slideshow. Okay. I'm sorry, I was wondering that. So this is a policy or a client data you asked? Depends on how your agency wants to use it. That's kind of my whole point of this presentation with HawkSoft. I can show you how Jem Young does it, but at the end of the day, it's how you guys want to do it. I use it. I don't use it for how long we've tracked the client. Like I said, we have a client miscellaneous field we use for that. So for us, sold date and an inception date typically match, typically. So let's say for Jake Carrera, he had a policy and we wanted to put it in. This is something I'm going to talk about too, but I would definitely recommend building what's called an insert policy button. Your CSRs and producers will thank you, because if anybody knows what producers hate, it's what? Data entry, and they're bad at it. I know, I'm one of them. So let's say we put a homeowner's policy in form, right? Let's say for some reason we just forgot to put it in, and he's been a customer of ours since 2020. So we put this in here, pick a company, I'm going to pick Travelers. Agent 1 is... she made the sale today. The source of this is an account round. Policy number is HM. Okay, so it's a 12-month policy. The effective date will be today. The inception date of this policy, let's say we just forgot to put it in. We're retroactively doing this, so bear with me for a second. Let's say this was in October 18th, 2020. So the sold date of this, you can have be exactly that. That's fine, if that's when you originally sold the policy. If this guy's been a client of yours forever, October 18th, 2017. So that's the example you're asking about. This is when you originally earned the customer. In this particular case, the inception date is when you wrote this policy, and you're on your first renewal. I know I kind of talked while I did that, so I'd be happy to go back through that. Does that kind of help? And that's okay. That's absolutely okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's not a thing wrong with that. Like I said, the beauty of this system is that I can do things a little differently than you guys, and it's two ways to the same conclusion. What my agency does is we have a client miscellaneous info, and we have built a field in here that says client since, and we put in this case, we would put in 10/18/2017 because of things like rewrites, because of things like adding lines of business. You know, you have a person buys a vacation home, person buys, especially in commercial lines. Let's go commercial lines here. You have bonding, you have workers' comp, you have commercial auto, they have commercial umbrellas, they have a commercial package. You know, they might have to add a bond and get rid of a bond every year. Anybody that does contractors know that license bonds come and go constantly. Same with performance bonds. So this is a way to do that too. So you're right. Great questions, though. That's a really good point. Any other questions on this? Because this is... Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. If that's how your agency wants to track it. So let me just repeat that back to you so I understand the question. So if you had someone you said you wrote with Safeco in 2015 and you had to rewrite them, you're asking me what the sold date should be. Does your agency track the length of your clients by the sold date? Because, and the reason I ask that, and this is kind of why I'm getting where I'm getting at, if it's a rewrite, you click the rewrite box here, and rewrites are automatically excluded from agency intelligence. So I'm not trying to dance around the question. The truth is it really matters most on what your agency's doing. Rewrites don't show up on reporting. So if you're going to use the sold date in your case to track that your client's been with you since 2015, then yes, I would advise that your account managers and producers, when they rewrite a policy, should keep that sold date the exact same. Inception date would be the day that new policy took place. So if you were in this case, right, it's exactly your example, just from 2017. You onboarded that client in 2017 with Safeco, Safeco non-renewed, and you rewrote them to Travelers on 10/18 of 2020. So the way this will show is this will show up not as new business because of a rewrite, and you'll be able to look back on this client file at any point in time, and based on your process you're outlining there, you'll be able to say that, okay, we've had this person since 10/18/2017. Okay. Okay. Ah. Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And the best thing about this is, and one of the main points I really want to drive home here is the most effective businesses are predictable and repeatable. Just because I do it one way and you do it a different way does not make me right or you wrong, or vice versa. As long as every one of your clients is getting the same experience and all of your processes are consistent across the board, you can implement things, quite frankly, however the system will let you and whatever makes the most sense for you. So excellent questions, guys. I got some swag for you. What's your first name again? Yeah. Vanessa. I'll get it to you after because that's a long walk and I got short legs. But excellent questions. Thanks, guys. Yes. I'm so glad you asked that question, by the way. What I would tell you to do, and I'll show you how to do one here real quick, I would have HawkSoft walk you through your first couple. It's not overly complicated. If you mess up, it just good old-fashioned doesn't work. But here's what we'll do. I will show you how to do this. I built these for, actually, this was a result of HawkSoft a couple years ago. Hug 2018. I was at a session that taught you how to build buttons, and I thought to myself, oh, my God. So we have this specifically set up. Go to the Hug Lab, bring your laptop, and literally they have to do it with you while you're down. But they're showing okay. Simple. It is a game changer for your CSRs, for staff. We have ones for rewrites. We have ones for insert policies. It's endless what you can do, and it cuts down on so many That's a great point, Dirk. And when's that session?
The labs are open all the time.
Okay.
There's HawkSoft employees and volunteers down there throughout the 2 days. So I would highly take your laptop down there if you've got questions on this or whatever, and they can literally show you and fix it right there. They did that for me the other day. I don't remember how to have those buttons, but we have them in there now.
Well, this particular setting will set it globally. So you can have external tools that are, I'm kind of diving into someone else's session, so I don't want to steal someone else's thunder, but when you build these buttons, you build them for your entire database. You're the administrator. So when you go up here to settings, oh man, you guys are going to make me work for it. This is not it. It's general configuration. So it's called Action Menu Customize Toolbar. So basically what this is saying is these are all the buttons that we've either built or that HawkSoft is providing. My favorite buttons is this one right here. Your CSRs will literally thank you. I know it's only saving 2 or 3 keystrokes, but it takes them right to a liability cert because every CSR known to man is on the phone, their cell phone's ringing, there's a pile of certs they need, and they got a bunch of renewals to do, and half of them are ENS. Trust me, if Renee was here, she'd be like, Leo, this is exactly the case. So we're going to delete this. Goodbye. I'm going to show you how to build one. So when you want to build a button, and we're going to build a liability cert button. So you go up here to New, click on that, and I like to call this, you don't get a lot of characters, so liability cert. So what you want to click here is this action. You can build like all kinds of hot buttons and stuff like that. I don't necessarily want to get into that today. Like I said, Dirk said the lab will really help you guys do that, but just general knowledge here. You hit these 3 little dots right here, and this is your process. So when you hit the 3 dots, your action sequence has begun. So you're telling the button what you want it to do. In this case, we want to create a liability cert. So we go to Internal, Accord Forms, for Accord Forms, obviously. Internal is print create, right? Certificate of liability, yes. So that's exactly what we want to do. So this will show this. So when you click this button, and we're going to put just whatever icon, it's going to be a question mark. So whatever icon you want to pick, and this is cool. Sidebar, if you guys have ever seen any warning on any microwave, engineers have designed those to stick right in your face. So when you see the lightning zapping the cat that says, don't put your cat in the microwave, I could promise you there was a panel of engineers that put way too much time into that. I say that to be kind of cheeky, but I also say this because I would pick something that's visually very stimulating. I wouldn't pick a folder or something lame. I would pick something that when your staff looks at that, they're like, wow, okay, boom, it's a star, or something weird, or a key. I don't care, whatever works for you guys. So then once you create your button, it'll come up at the bottom. And if you want to organize it, I like to organize buttons based on their functionality because you don't want your staff searching. So you can use these little arrows up here. And I'm going to put liability cert right next to property cert. Then once you're done, you click OK. And now you see liability cert has entered up here. So then what's your first name? Lynn. So Lynn, when your CSRs are asking to create a liability cert and they click the button, boom. Right there. They click new. Yeah, hot buttons. They're fun. Buttons are really cool. Buttons kind of help customize your process. Great question, Lynn. Okay. Okay. Ma'am, what's your name? Jill, is there a link on the HUG website that you can maybe guide us to for some of the folks that don't know? Okay, that's a really good piece. Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. What's your name? Corey. Thank you, Corey. That's a really good point. I didn't know that. I've been using these default buttons, so. See, you guys taught me something, too. I definitely don't have all the answers, so thank you, Corey. You guys, Corey, Jill, Lynn, I got you guys on the swag list. All right, cool. Let's move on. Okay, so custom statuses is huge. Just like custom buttons, and my whole theme, again, is make HawkSoft work for you. Customize what you're doing. So when you want to create a custom status, everybody has a little bit different prospecting status. Everybody has a little bit different proposed, or we call them prospects and lead statuses. That's really where we see them the most. We've built actually a custom status called canceled natural attrition because we want to track at our agency how many people are leaving because they die, or they're elderly and no longer drive, or they've sold their business, or they've simply retired and moved to a different state. Because we want to be able to measure our producers and CSRs based on their performance, not just what naturally happens to the world. So what I want to jump to next is exactly how to do this. So I'm not going to read this to you guys. You guys are a very engaged group, so I just want to jump right back to HawkSoft. And here. So I see HawkSoft on my screen. I don't see it on this screen. Okay. So we are going to go back to Daprile Enterprises. Okay. Okay. So let's say at Daprile Enterprises, we have a new policy. We're going to put this in later. But let's say that we want to create some custom lead statuses because you guys are working on prospecting and you go back to your agencies and say, I really want to use sales and retention to the fullest ability. So come up to here. See where it says sales pipeline substatuses? Double click that. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the sales and retention stuff. So what we did with my agency is anybody, let me back up, any agency owners or sales managers, has anybody taken the Dynamics and Selling course? Do you guys qualify your leads? You have a fit meeting and qualify if this person's just trying to keep their agent honest or what they're looking for? Okay, well, this is basically how you sort your prospects. So what we do at Gem Young, our process is if I have someone that calls me and says, Leo, I'm renewing in December, my buddy has his contractor's company with you, and my other buddy has his fleet. We heard you're really cool. We want to see if you can help us. And I say, sure, great. We meet with them for 15 minutes and make sure that they're the right fit for us philosophically. It's just an extra step we do. So when that lead comes to Gem Young, it would become commercial unqualified. I put all these in myself custom, so yours is going to look different. So commercial unqualified is how it starts. Once we meet with them and they say, Leo, I've been with my agent for 25 years. He was a great guy, but he retired. I've heard good stuff about you. I really care about protecting my stuff. I don't want to pay a fortune to do it, but the relationship really matters, right? That's a really good prospect. So they become commercial qualified, a custom status that I put in. Once we've qualified them through the fit meeting, we have what we've called the fact finding, which is something that I've built. Fact finding is exactly what it sounds like. You're filling out the supplemental questionnaires, you're getting the underwriting information, all the stuff you need to quote. Quoting is here. Also, submission for E&S. That's why we put quoting/submission. This is really important for an excess and surplus lines and manual procedure, but just as much for a standard market. Reviewing internal. I don't know how many of you sales managers do this, but any producer in their first 90 days, I look at everything they sell. I don't want an EO claim. So that's what reviewing internal means. That means Leo needs to look at it. Reviewing external means that there's an underwriter that needs to have their opinion on it. Proposed means they've presented it, and sold pending. Sold pending is my least favorite as a sales manager and a producer because just close it, right? This is why I'm in sales. I don't have all the patience. So I'm walking you guys through this nuance for a second because I'm showing you how I've taken this and said, okay, HawkSoft, thanks for the skeleton. I'm building my own. Let's say we want to add a new one. Let's say you guys don't want sold pending or proposed or reviewing external or internal. Let's say that this is a different process. Joe, what's your process? We'll use yours. Okay. I'd be happy to send this to you for your help, by the way. Yeah, this presentation's recorded, and my LinkedIn's linked up, too.
All presentations will be available for download or review for 6 months after the thing.
Dirk, you get some swag, too. You're my wingman.
I know people are taking notes, which is phenomenal, because I know I learn when I write stuff down, but just know if you do miss something, that every class is being recorded and will be available for 6 months.
Perfect. Well, let's say you're going to follow my process. Joe, let's just say that this is something we're going to do. So if you want to add something, you click this little plus button, and it's quite literally what that is. Let's say it's... Yeah. We've gone to Agency Zoom at this point, but before Agency Zoom, and anybody that's used Agency Zoom, it's crashed a little bit recently. We had to reset our field mapping, which we figured out, which was fun, but this is not a bash on Agency Zoom. I love Agency Zoom. They're fantastic software. This is also a fantastic tool as well. And we've used this for years, and I've had a lot of success with it. So, Joe, let's say that your team has a fit meeting, they fact find, they quote, and then you want to call it sales presentation. This means your people have built a sell or set a selling appointment. So you click plus again, and then let's say you have propose. Okay, so this is your process. So you've added these two fields. Now, pop quiz, does anybody know where these, I gotta stay by the microphone. Does anybody know where these two fields are gonna show up? It'll show up in the substatus, but it'll show up on the sales and retention dashboard on the left-hand side. So you'll be able to actually, once this is implemented and your prospects start to have these tagged on their policies, you'll be able to report these in real time. Remember I had at the title of the beginning why you should care? You should see how many people are presenting and proposed and sold pending, because this is how you can help track their close ratio. So if you have a producer that's got 100 policies proposed and only 20 of those became active policies or new, then you can sit back there and say, dude, your close ratio is 20%. What can we do to fix that? So this is kind of that's extrapolating the data a little farther, not just the nuts and bolts of it too. So as of right now, and I'm going to defer this question to an agency Zoom rep, but as of right now, the way we do it is once you put in a new prospect policy, it populates to agency Zoom. We use our sales pipeline exclusively through agency Zoom because it'll send us an email reminder. You got, everybody X dates, right? So I get a list every morning that says, okay, you got to call these 5 people for their renewal coming up. After we sell it in agency Zoom, we put it to sold, and then we data enter in HawkSoft. They're still working to talk to each other. They're a little standoffish, but they're talking to each other more than they used to. So if you don't have that, I would definitely make sure this is as spot on as possible. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Have you guys liked that? I heard that's really cool stuff. And what's your first name again? Heather, you're on the swag list. But Heather makes a really good point. And I'm really glad you said that, because Heather is using this for something that's completely different, but it's working for her. So again, theme, use the software for exactly what you use it for. So let's say, to get back to this, and you can use this, again, for close ratio. This is why it's important, again, for commercial lines. So that producer that's closing 20 out of 100 might have 45 of them that are underwriting rejected. So you might be saying to your marketing and your sales team, we are not prospecting markets that were built to write. Or you use this to say to your carriers, we got to talk about your underwriting appetite. Or this is a conversation to have with your agency owner, or as an agency owner, say maybe we need to bring in some carriers that can start to handle all of these qualified sales leads that underwriting had rejected. Again, another usage of the software. We use refused right here. This is definitely different. HawkSoft has didn't buy risk. And I love HawkSoft. I don't know what that means. And that's okay. So I would advise changing that to something that means something to you. You guys might be in this room and be like, Leo, dude, you're a bonehead. We all know what that means. And that's okay. Ah. Wow. Oh, my God. See? You guys are teaching me a lot today. This is awesome. Yeah, this is cool. See, this is what I love about Hug. Everybody kind of learns from each other, right? So that's didn't buy risk. Okay. This is great for a fleet policy, true, if you're quoting a truck policy for somebody or a big inland marine schedule. We had a guy a couple months ago that called me and said, hey, by the way, I just rented $1.5 million of equipment. I need a cert. I'm like, dude, what? Like, give me an hour. But anyway, so I would build these for your refuse so you can track why your sales are failing. Rejected is why the agency doesn't want to do it. So you might have an underwriting reject. You might have an agency disqualified where someone is just, everybody remembers their insurance license, the morale hazard, right? We run from those people. Those are bad prospects. Or someone might say you're really interested. They meet with one of your producers. They love it. And then you say, hey, can we meet to complete the fact find? And they're like, no. Don't feel like it. So anyway, that's just what that is. So let's jump up here to sales and retention. And Joe, I'll show you exactly where this shows up. So we're going to hit the refresh button up here. So if you guys notice, if you look on the lead section here, this is where those qualified substatuses that were custom showed up. What we changed was prospect. It didn't show up. I probably have to shut it down and add it, Joe. But this is where they will show up. So then you as a owner or anybody that manages your sales team can look at this and say, okay, well, Leo's got 3 in fact-finding. He's got 3 in quoting submission, and he's proposed 10. So we want to really pay a lot of attention to him in the next week or two to see how many of those 16 we end up converting. And the cool thing is you can sort this a ton of different ways. See, at our agency, we have multi-line producers. So that means we don't have agents. We call them risk management advisors. So I'm licensed to sell property and casualty, life and health. So I write personal, commercial, I bond, I do life, I do disability, I do Medicare supplements. I prospect for my little brother who's in wealth management. So I have multi-line. So we group by producers for clients. We group by agent one for lines of business, because I might have a client that has an existing life policy that Leo Sr. wrote, that I wrote their commercial lines, and Denny White wrote their personal lines. So you could have separate agent ones on the same client tab. You guys follow what I'm saying there? Okay, good. Yeah, that one's pretty basic. So this is cool. You can sort by that. Agent one, agent two. This is something that I'm totally deviating from my PowerPoint. I don't even know why I made time to do that. But let's talk about commercial renewals for a second, because this to me is an extremely powerful tool. This to me has helped me keep so many clients. And the reason is, how many people have talked to a new prospect and says, my agent hasn't called me in 3 years? Call your people, Joe. Well, what was your name back there with Agency Revolution? Heather. Agency Revolution can help you with that. So could Agency Zoom. But if you don't have that, or if you're a smaller agency, everybody knows you got to weigh price versus reward, right? You got to get the value out of it. What I have our account managers do is every 90 days, they will come down here and search by agent one. And in the next 90 days, I want to know exactly who's renewing. I want to know exactly how many policies we have renewing. I want to know how much premium we have renewing, because I want to track this for retention ratio. So if you have $250,000 of premium renewing and you keep 100 of it, you got to know why. So you can use this to proactively reach out to people. So you can run reports on all this. You double-click the policies, and it'll tell you exactly which clients they are. What we do in our weekly staff meetings is we'll go through this, and I meet with my commercial account manager every other day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we go through stuff like this, especially for excess and surplus lines. So let's say this is an excess and surplus lines policy, right? What does excess and surplus lines need? Show of hands. Anybody know? Blood, a kidney, a liver, firstborn child. Yeah. Yeah, they want to, anyway. So you're exactly right. So this is really good for excess and surplus, because you have 90 days to call your broker, which how many brokers are proactive? Exactly 0. That's the brokerages. And I'm not saying bad things about brokers. They got a lot going on. The way I see it is we get paid commission. It's our job to manage that. So you can call your broker and say, hey, El Burrito Entertainment, love that name, LLC, is renewing here in 90 days. Can you please talk to your underwriter, and in the next week or two, please send us the requirements for binding and any updated information on the policy. They'll say, Leo, great, we'll get it to you in 2 weeks. But it's on top of mind, and now you can create a workflow from this too. Then you can say, okay, well, we got a policy renewing here in 90 days. We should probably tell the advisor to give them a call and set up a renewal meeting. So that way you can stay in touch with your clients, and not only from a relationship standpoint, but let's look at it from purely an underwriting standpoint. Every commercial client of ours changes. They all do. They buy vehicles, they add employees. Contractors decide, hey, listen, I've been really booming. I'm going to add another person. I'm going to start subbing out a little more over here. I'm getting into residential, or I'm getting into commercial, or whatever. So this is good to be able to keep track of your E&O as well as your client growth there too. Questions? Joe, we built a process where 45 days before every personal lines renewal, they get a checklist, and they say, hey, we're going to call you in a couple weeks, but these are what we look for. We find that these changes happen the most in people's lives, and we want to stay on top of it. So we ask them if you bought your wife jewelry. We ask them if, okay, well, your wife started that home-based gym. That was my mom. We had to update their home-based business policy. Did you buy new vehicles? Did your child turn 16 and start driving? So what Agency Zoom can do is you can build in all kinds of, I can have a 2-hour presentation on the stuff we've done with them. I'd go talk to them. Yeah, they've done a really good job for us. And same with commercial lines. They'll import your book of business, and every 60 days, they'll just send them out, or 60 days before renewal rather, they'll send them out hey, you're renewing in 60 days. Keep an eye out. Leo's calling you in 2 weeks. It's cool. So. Mm-hmm. I get emails from 3 people. Aaron Glista, my chief operating officer, my clients, and then Agency Zoom. Yeah, it's so many, but it's really nice. Really creates a good workflow. Sales and retention. Questions? Awesome questions, guys. You guys have been awesome. All right, let's jump out of this. and back here. Okay. So everybody, show of hands, who has a ENS? Anybody write ENS in here? How many people like writing ENS? ENS is actually I'm glad you raised your hand, because there's a niche market there, and if you understand the exclusions well enough and can advise properly on it, you can do a really good job. So ENS don't renew, unfortunately. And if you have an ENS company that renews, please call me. I would love to get an appointment with them. But we do a lot with a couple of brokerages, and they're fantastic. We use Atlantic Casualty, Scottsdale, Northfield, USLI. You know the standard gambit of ENS companies. So since they don't download, we have to make sure that we have a really good written process. If you walk out of here today and you write down and implement one workflow, this is the one I would advise to implement, because if you get this right, you'll never miss an ENS renewal. So they have to process them manually. They're going to vary. With ENS, what else do you have to do? Input coverages manually, input premiums manually, input vehicle schedules manually, input driver schedules manually, inland marine. It's a process. It's definitely a process. So that's what these are all for. So at Gem Young, we have bonding, life insurance. Some of our regional carriers, we have a company out of West Virginia called Municipal Mutual. They're fantastic. They absolutely crush it in West Virginia for us. But they're a really small super regional company. So they just don't have the infrastructure to download. And you guys probably have one of those in mind that's a real good niche for you. And a lot of the umbrellas and excess and surplus lines. So let's talk about a manual renewal process. What we want to do, and I love that they're getting rid of suspenses and calling them tasks. How many people love typing the same thing over and over again? I don't. I hate it. So what you can do is you can create a default suspense template. What this means is you click the little pencil by the suspense, and it will say, manual renewal, you need XYZ. Or it'll say, new policy download check, we want to verify XYZ. Or it'll say, hey, we just wrote a homeowner's policy. In 5 years, we want to check the RCE to make sure that inflation guard didn't run away. Or a commercial building, we want to make sure that we're, accounting for whatever. You guys can do this endlessly. Hot buttons and shortcuts. Hot buttons and shortcuts are outstanding. Like I've been beating to death, provide detailed written procedures to your staff. What we use is actually Microsoft PowerPoint for our workflows. The reason I use PowerPoint is everybody in here, when I kind of ask visual learner, you guys are kind of like, yeah, I'm a visual learner. So is your staff. So I would definitely make sure that I have pictures. I even go as far as to put arrows. I screenshot HawkSoft, and I have an arrow that says, when this happens, click this button. I highlight certain things. This is when you want to pay attention to this, and they love it. My older staff prints out all the PowerPoints and pins it to their cubicle, and although I cringe when they do that, I'm glad they're using it. We're still working through all that, but I would write that down. I would definitely, once a year, because every carrier wants a review, I would just make sure that they're implementing download capabilities. Anybody in here write for auto owners? Has anybody here written a garage policy with auto owners? You know, right? It's super weird. They download everything except for the garage liability and garage keepers. I don't know why. They're a massive company. I love auto owners. They are a terrific company. They just don't download that. But that's okay. These are the things, and I bring that up for an example, not to poke fun at auto owners, but these are the things when you're meeting with your territory sales managers, you should know exactly what's downloaded and what's not so you can get ahead of the manual renewals. Sales and retention, and create your own buttons. You guys want to see a demo of what a manual renewal looks like? Okay, cool. All right. And we got about 10 minutes left, and I have a ton more slides. I was practicing this with my girlfriend last night. She's like, dude, you have way too much slides. So if there's things in the last 10 minutes that you guys have like burning questions on, interrupt me. We'll go through it. So a manual renewal. We're going to do Daprile Enterprises, and we're going to say it's this surety bond, right? So for a manual renewal, what I like to do the best is I've created this little renew button. I'm pretty sure this comes with HawkSoft. I don't know that for a fact. For some reason, it disappeared on ours. We might have deleted it by accident. Honestly, that could have been me monkeying around. But I would make sure that you're very well aware of this. So when you click the renew button, it will give you the new renewal date. You can put in the premium. It's really, really cool. So outside of that, what you're going to want to do, where's my log note? Here we go. So for manual renewals, you have a log note. You can create a custom template. So for manual renewals, I spell out exactly to my team what they want to do. So I didn't make it, but I type it in here. And after you process the renewal, you create the suspense, and you create it for this time next year. So that way, number one, you're saving yourself keystrokes, and you're creating a workflow ahead of time for the future, so that way you're not reactively managing your renewals, you're proactively managing your renewals. To me, manual renewals are no more complicated than that. It's really just staying on top of everything. If you're leveraging sales and retention, if you're leveraging your custom suspenses, and if you're leveraging that renew button, you're on top of manual renewals more than most. Now, as you guys know, you'll have to come in here, action, internal, change client policy. You have to put in all the coverages, right? Oops. So if we had a... Why aren't you doing what I want you to do? Okay. Well, that's not doing what I want it to do. But you'll have to update the coverages. So if for some reason the building limit, you have an inflation guard, and you add that 1%, you have to update the building limit. If business personal property increases, this is the other side of manual renewals too. But this is a workflow we create for our service team. So in that default suspense, we say, prepare updated accord forms, prepare updated supplementals, get new finance agreement, set suspense for next year, so it's always populating. Questions? Of my demonstrations, that was the most clunky, so that's okay. I'm aware of how that one went. Okay, good. Let's jump back to this. How many of you know if you have synchronous or asynchronous downloads? And what does that mean? What was that? Okay, so an asynchronous download means they just send the new information. A synchronous download means they'll just overlap it with what the carrier has. So for example, if you have a rewrite. So if you are, we're going to do a rewrite here. I'll show you what this means. So if in this case we're rewriting this policy, right? There's a... I keep doing that. Man, one of these days, by the end of this presentation, that's okay. Essentially what you want to do with these is you're going to have a rewrite that's going to say, probably in your case, replaced. So status will say, I know I got to exit that. There we go. Come on. So your status when you do a rewrite, how many people are putting that as status replaced? How many are not? Why not? You can have a carrier turn it off. Sometimes they won't. We've had some carriers able to do it. In the perfect world, Heather, you're exactly right. You call your carriers and say, hey, change our download preferences. Not our culprit, but we know Grange Insurance they're like 60% of our book of business. So when we rewrite, they're largely personal lines with us. So when we rewrite a personal lines account, we've asked them to not change that, and it still comes down as canceled insured request. It's not a HawkSoft thing. It's the way your carrier's downloads are set up. Sometimes, if you're lucky, they can set that or change that setting. Otherwise, you kind of got to just work with it, unfortunately. So we're rewriting this policy, right? Now, we were going to status replaced. Do you know why I brought up status replaced? Why does that matter? Bingo. The reason why you want to use status replaced is exactly as Dirk said. It's not new, but you didn't lose it. It's just different. So with agency intelligence, you come to policies added, excludes the source of rewrite. You guys see that? That little checkbox at the top of and I'll show you here in a second. See where it says policies lost? Excludes replaced. So when you run a cancellation report and you want to see what your books of business are doing, anything that has a status of replaced will not show up on cancellation. Because the truth is you didn't lose that client, and you didn't sell somebody new. So we've actually had the case, and this was a long time ago, where we had producers that were rewriting their books a lot, and they looked like they were rock stars. I mean, their premium was through the roof. We're like, oh, my God, you guys are great. Why isn't our book of business growing? Right? It's a valid question. So that's why I would advocate rewrite, and I would advocate replaced. So here's what all that means. So you come here. We're going to rewrite this policy for Daprile Enterprises. That Lorenzo von Matterhorn, that CEO, is a real pain in the neck, but we have to rewrite him. So we insert policy. It's a commercial policy. And we come up here to general policy information. And when you do a rewrite, this little box right here is exactly what I was talking about. If this is clicked, this is not on your cancellation report. This is going to sound weird, and I'm going to try to save you guys a little bit of head banging. It's not here. If you're trying to do the drag and drop in, or the drop down menu, you know exactly what I'm talking about, Jill. Oh my God, I had to call HawkSoft support. I'm like, guys, am I losing it? Like, what's going on? They're like, no, Leo, you're just losing it. It's fine. Yep, you're exactly right. So the checkbox is really nice. I like it a lot. So I would just rewrites. That's the first one. No. There's 2 steps to this. The rewrite button will keep it off your cancellation report. And on the old policy, status replaced will keep it off your new business. Heather. Yep. Mm-hmm. I would go back to your agency's processes. Our rule is if you have a lapse and it's past a year, then it counts as new business. So if for some reason it canceled, non-pay, why ever it canceled, right? And the client comes back. They have the same home, they have the same cars, they have the same business, and we're just rewriting a new policy. If it's within 12 months, we consider it a rewrite and we go replaced. If it's a lapse within 30 days, then we can, it's kind of depending on your process. If it's a lapse within 30 days, we just go with reinstate. It's not new business because you didn't lose it. If the premium changed, it is what it is. So if you had somebody, here's a good example. Let's say you have a commercial policy. And let's say that this person, all right, here's a good example. I have a client. His name is Tom. I really like Tom. Tom is a residential new builder. And what Tom did in the last 2 months is he started a new company that takes old houses, puts steel beams underneath them, takes a hydraulic jack and jacks them up and builds a new foundation. That screams E&S. So outside of consulting him to separate the companies, we had to technically rewrite part of this company. So we did the exact same process here. We canceled the old policy, replaced, and when it says action internal change policy status, you can go here to replaced, and it'll give you a bunch of reasons. So the reason we used is the risk changed. So his operation changed, so we had to rewrite it. Sometimes it's price. They have bad claims. Sometimes they just move to Pennsylvania, right? It's an Ohio company. You want to move to Pennsylvania, right? So we didn't lose the business, but we have to give you a new policy because it's a separate state, separate rules, all that fun stuff. So that's why we would do that. Pardon me? In my case? Well, we didn't get rid of his existing policy, and we consulted him to start a new company and a new LLC because we were able to, in the E&S case, it's new premium. In the existing company, we kept that as just renewal because nothing changed. Initially, it was a non-renew. So we'd submitted the change to the carrier. The carrier said, yeah, we don't want to take on this. This is not in our appetite. We're going to non-renew it. So that's why we ended up making the change there. So, am I out of time? Oh, my God. All right, well, you guys have been fantastic. Every one of you, I hope you learned something. Heather, everybody, Dirk, you guys all taught me a lot. Thank you. If anybody wants to go over any of this again after, I'd be happy to stay late and review any of it with you. Yes, sir. Love it. Thank you, all of you. I hope you learned something, and enjoy the rest of your trip.